What we did today is we just extended our declaration of an emergency for an additional 2 weeks. Under state law, I have the authority by myself to do it for 1 week, but then the court must act on any extension. The river crested overnight, and we were discussing that. It's down about 5 inches at Richmond, so we know if we dodge rain today that we will slowly begin to dry out, but it's going to be a matter of days. We won't, if we get no more rain and nothing falls up north of us, it will be into Monday before we get out of major flood stage, which is 50 feet at Richmond. So it'll take us the whole weekend to drop the remaining 4.5 feet. It's a serious issue. 20% of the county is underwater. Over 40,000 residents are impacted. And there's a dichotomy there because 40,000 plus residents are directly impacted by inability to move around their homes. Some have water in them. Some of our farmers and ranchers are losing animals. Some of our folks in very new subdivisions have water issues near or in their homes. For the remaining almost 700,000 residents that live behind levees or live on high ground in Cinco, it's a nuisance, and there's no immediate threat to them, and that's the nature of river floods. They're devastating where the water can reach. If the water doesn't reach, it's just a news event. So we have to be very careful not to take it lightly and see that we continue to do the job. We will be shifting today, late today, into recovery mode. And there's a lot out there that we don't know about. Damage to state and county property. We may have folks injured or lives lost out there. There's a lot of areas that are inundated right now. We'll be setting up the assets to immediately go into recovery mode and remove debris, investigate all those areas as the water recedes, and just make sure that we're putting the county back together as best we can after an event like this. As I said, the 100-year flood stage is 55 feet at Richmond, so it wasn't a 100-year flood, but we got to 54.81. So we got within less than 0.2 of a foot of the 100-year flood elevation at the Richmond gauge. This is a very serious flood.
Judge, for those who are not familiar with the terminology, what's the practical effect or the purpose of having extended the disaster declaration?
Well, it does two things. It extends my authority as the authority of my emergency management coordinator to take action in the emergency under the law. We have much more broader authority to make critical decisions. We do that in a cooperative way with all the jurisdictions. One thing a judge has to remember, you have a lot of authority during an emergency, but when the emergency's over, you're just the judge, and you have to answer to all those folks who reacted to those decisions. So we're very careful about that. But it does keep that going. Secondly, it keeps us in an emergency situation by declaration, which is critical for qualifying folks for FEMA support, state support such as that for folks out there that are uninsured and have suffered losses. We want to make sure that we don't know the extent of those losses. So we'll continue the emergency until we have an inventory of that, even if the river gets well back in its banks. And that's just so the folks that are eligible can access those state and federal resources that are available to them. But we can't determine what that is till we get the water off the land. And that's going to take days.
Jeff Braun was talking about, I believe yesterday or the day before, about the state sending additional resources. Can you specify what those resources are? I mean, is it human, but as well, I don't know, high water vehicles, boats?
Well, we've had over 300 folks in here from the state and other agencies since the outbreak. We've had high water vehicles. We have about 6 various types of boats. They've been a lot of state agencies like Texas Task Force 1 have made evacuations and rescues for us. So that's state is ongoing. The issue that we had last night and this morning is if we get this rain, basically the Weather Bureau gives us an 80% chance of rain in Fort Bend County today. And they tell us that it's probably going to be 1 inch to 2 inches at most, which we can probably handle. But it could be up to 6 inches in spots. Well, if it gets up to 6 inches, the river's going to come back up. We planned for 55 feet. We had a forecast of 53.5. We planned for 55. And we have assets in place to handle up to 55. We didn't quite get there, so we're covered. If local rains reach a level of intensity that the river starts coming back up and goes through 55, that changes the whole dynamic in the floodplain out there, and we're going to have additional resources. So we've got the state on standby. If we dodge the bullet on the rain today, we probably won't need those additional assets for rescue and evacuation. As we get into recovery mode, we'll shift assets. Then we'll get more state and federal assets to deal with recovery. Like FEMA will set up an office. They're in the process of attempting to get those contracts drawn right now so they can come in and set up an office so folks can go to one location to process claims. And we're going to have a number of claims. There's a lot of damage out there.